Hey everyone, welcome to the 26th episode of RippleLIVE. I'm your host Steve, and I'm here with my buddy Mark Spencer, who is in Central America right now, specifically in Belize. Hey Mark, how you doing?
I'm great. I'm warm. How are you doing?
Good. If there's any place to escape COVID, then that would be the top of my destination list, is Belize. I know a lot of people are seeing you in your tropical locales in our videos. You know, you're walking in the sand, you have palm trees, you have an ocean, you're filming, cumulus nimbus, time lapse. So, we're all jealous.
Yeah, it's been, I'm very, very lucky to be here, and I would complain about how much I'm working, but nobody's going to listen to that.
So we have a really great show for you today. Mark, why don't you tell them a little bit about the format for those people who are new and haven't experienced?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, so if some of you may be new to us here, if you are, thank you for joining us. What we're going to do over the course of the next hour or so is answer your questions about Final Cut Pro and Motion and application-related subjects. There is a chat window where you can enter questions. We've also sent out a survey to folks earlier who are on our mailing list, and they've given us a list of things they want us to address. We're going to start with those, but you can put things in the chat and we'll answer those. If you want to make a contribution, there's a little $ sign. You can click and make a nominal contribution, and that will do two things. Stick, and we will be more likely to see it and answer it. But we'll try to answer everything, and we are going to start with questions that have already come in. So I think Steve has a couple he wants to attack right away, so I'm going to let him jump in right now.
Right. So, we typically go through the list of questions that we have ahead of time. If you want to post your questions in the chat, you can. We're going to be monitoring that. So we'll be going through and answering your questions. Wow. Okay. So we have people from all over the world. Quebec City, Istanbul, Finland, Canada, Colorado, Maryland. Welcome, everybody. It's pretty exciting to have a truly international audience here. What I want to talk about before we jump into what we're going to cover today is we are still running our Cyber Week special. If you go to our website, we sell tutorials and we sell plugins. We have a sale that's 40% off of any single item in your cart, and the code's up on the screen right there. And you can take advantage of that until Monday. So if you want to pick up a tutorial on Final Cut, Motion, Resolve, or one of our RippleLIVE tutorials, now's a great time to do that. It's a great way to support the show. Just wanted to kind of, do the little bit of advertising up front before we get into anything else. Okay, so what we're going to start with, a question that has to do with compressor, and I'm just going to be referencing my spreadsheet of all the questions I've had. So this one is a Handbrake question. So Handbrake is a great. So the question is, I've been using Handbrake instead of Compressor to get small files for streaming. With Compressor now including HEVC, which is H.265, would you recommend using Handbrake instead of Compressor? Okay, so a little bit of background on Handbrake. Handbrake is what I call a can opener. It pretty much will open just about any file type. It's cross-platform, so you can export to different Windows formats and maybe some older codecs that aren't supported anymore. It's really a great tool to have. Honestly, I don't use it to export HEVC because it's built right into Compressor. In fact, Travis, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Compressor for a second. You'll be able to see that the HEV presets are pretty easy to create. I created a custom set that says HEVC, and you would set the codec right here in the inspector. Right here it's set for HEVC. And then you can bring your clip into Compressor and export right from here, or you can create a preset in Final Cut. So the short answer is I don't use Handbrake. I use the tools that are built into the Apple ecosystem. Apple has optimized their codecs. They're really easy to use. They're accessible within Compressor and Final Cut, and I just don't see any reason to use another application to do what Final Cut does very well. So that's my answer to that question. All right, so let me jump back over and look at the next question. All right, so the next question was, and by the way, I should point out that one of the things that's different about how we're going to organize the show is we're putting all of the topics together. So for example, when we start talking about HDR, that will be in one section of the movie. We talk about, when we talk about audio, that'll be in one section. So when you go back to the show afterwards, it'll be bookmarked for that section. You won't have to wade through a bunch of different disparate topics. They'll be all put together in one section for you. So I just wanted to mention that's something we're going to do for this show. So I'm doing that. I'm going in order. One of the questions that was asked, is there a solution to the selection on columns to show the browser? Is there a way to save a preference? So what that question refers to is in the browser, if you're in your list view like this, is there a way to, if you organize these columns, is there a way to actually save this column layout? Answer, no. That's something that I've wanted for some time, and it's just, it doesn't make the list of priorities for whatever reason. But yeah, it's annoying, and every time you open a project, you got to kind of start from scratch. So unfortunately, it is what it is. So no, can't be fixed. So next question. This is one this is an interesting one. Can you export all clips from the timeline as separate clips with color correction and effects, or do you have to do it one by one with a trim tool? I don't see what the trim tool has anything to do with it, but I think I know what you mean. So let me jump back over to my interface for a second. And I'm going to have a project open. I'm going to go ahead and just delete these dissolves for a moment. So let's say, actually, I'm sorry, I had the wrong project open. Forgive me. Let me go. There we go. Okay, I want to bring up this project. Okay, here's a project that I recently shot with my GoPro Hero 9 in Southern California waters, Catalina to be specific. And every one of these shots was color graded because I didn't have a red filter and everything looked green. So every one of these shots. So the question is, can I export these out as individual clips with the color grade? No, you cannot do that. There is no share individual clip option from the timeline. It's something that I think is a glaring omission and something I'd like them to add. So how can you do this? Well, I'm going to show you a workflow that I just recently thought of. In fact, I thought about it yesterday, and this is one that I will definitely use. So what I'm going to do is, after I've color graded all my clips, I'm going to go to the File menu, and I'm going to go Share, and I'm going to choose Master File. And under Settings, I'm going to choose Video Only because I'm not interested in the audio. I just want the clips. And I'm going to choose a ProRes option. In this case, I'll just choose ProRes 422. And then I'll click Next, and I'll save it on my desktop. Now, I've already done that, so we don't have to sit here and watch the whole thing export. But now, what I'm going to do is jump over to Davinci Resolve, and I'm going to take that clip that I exported. Here's my ProRes clip with all my color graded clips, and I'm going to drop this into a timeline. Okay, I'm in the cut page. So here's my clips. There's my ProRes clip that I just rendered out of Final Cut. Now, this is amazing. And this is the Davinci Resolve 17. And it's a new feature that they've added. If you go to the timeline, there's a feature called Detect Scene Cuts. And this is something that only works with the studio version, and it's worth every penny, trust me, because I just do this, and Resolve's neural engine goes into work, and it starts to analyze the clip to determine where all the cuts happen in that ProRes file. So you can see it's analyzing it, it's going through, and it's actually making physical cuts at every single cut point. Okay, so look at this. So I have all my cuts. Look at that. Cuts, and they're all color graded. Okay, so next, all I need to do is go over to the deliver page, which I'm going to do here. And here's, see, it treats it as individual clips. And I'm going to choose a ProRes preset in the deliver page. I'm going to give this a file name. I'm going to say GoPro underwater, whatever you want to call it. And then you set a location where you want the files to be stored. But here's the key. Notice render set for single clip, but I could set for individual clips. So when I add this to the render queue, which I'll go ahead and do right now, I'll add to the render queue, and there it is, and I click render all, I'll get individual clips of all my ProRes files. So, and by the way, I'm not going to do that because I don't want you to sit here and watch it. I've already created the export, and here they are in this folder here. So I'm just open this up. And by the way, you can also set up custom naming conventions. So you can set it up however you want, but notice as I go through these are literally all the individual clips that have been graded in ProRes, and there we are. So just a fantastic way of using Resolve. Now, people ask us all the time, do you guys use Resolve? Yes, we use Resolve. That's a great feature. That's a good reason to have Resolve right there. I could just make a bunch of clips out of a single clip. All right, so that's my tip, and now it's back to you, Mark. Yeah. Great.
So I will address a couple of questions here that were posted earlier. So one question was, there are a lot of Final Cut Pro 10 third-party color correcting / grading plugins out there. If you need more or better option for color correcting that come with Final Cut, what are the best plugins out there? So this is my personal answer to that question. First, I find that the grading tools in Final Cut Pro are more than adequate for about 90% of what I do. You may not be familiar with how deep those grading tools go. We've got a full tutorial called Advanced Color Grading in Final Cut Pro 10. And you might want to check that out or look at the table of contents just to make sure you're not missing anything, because the tools are pretty extensive, especially when they've added this HSL selections for color masks, which is something you couldn't do before. Sorry, I just lost a light there, but I'll just move this one over here. So that's my first answer is you make sure what you know what's in Final Cut, because the tools are deep. In those occasions when I need to do something else, the plugin for me is Resolve. So just to follow up on Steve, there are very good plugins. There's Color Finale, there's other ones. I don't use those because my feeling is if I really need more than Final Cut, then I'm going to go to Resolve because it's got everything. I mean, especially with the latest update, the version 17 beta that's out there now has some new color correction tools that are really powerful. There's a magic mask, and there's a color warper and this HER tools, and we have a video on our YouTube site. You can find that. It's a free overview of what those tools are. But that's my personal feeling about it, is 90 to 95% in Final Cut. Occasionally when I need to do more than that, like use those tools for tracking, a plugin to track your color corrections in Final Cut. But really, if I need to do a lot of face tracking and stuff like that, I will do that in Resolve. So
right.
That is that one. You feel the same way about that, Steve?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the good answer. Every now and then your audio is going out, but I guess that's the vagaries of being on a remote tropical place.
Of being police. Yeah.
Yes, of being police.
Bear with me. This is the first time we're trying this, and I brought everything. I've got my A10 mini switcher here. Mm-hmm. I've got my GH5S camera. I'm literally using everything that we use in the studio, except the and one battery just died. But anyway, so a couple questions about effects. I had somebody wrote in and said that they were basically creating an alpha channel in Final Cut. In other words, they wanted to Photoshop so they could have it on a transparent background. They're doing it in Final Cut, which is perfectly reasonable because the draw mask tool in Final Cut is like the pen tool in Photoshop and works great. But they were saying that they were having trouble with importing the image and it didn't look right. So Steve and I both tested this. We did not see a problem, but I'm going to share my screen now and just show you what I did. So this is an image that has a little flower. In fact, I'll turn off the draw mask. You can see there's the whole image. That's just on the deck here. And I used the draw mask to draw a quick mask. It's not great, but just to demo it. And then I put a little generator in the background just so you could see it on a colored background, that's all. But with the generator turned off, I then exported this as a PNG, so with transparency, right? And then I re-imported it, and that's this guy right here. And by the way, here, let me put it in the timeline. You can tell it has transparency. If you go to View and you choose Alpha, you'll see, well, let me turn these other things off behind it. There, you can see that it has transparency by viewing the alpha. That's always a useful thing to know how to do. So if I turn these back on, you might wonder where it is, but it was exactly the same spot. So I'll move it over. That's the original one on the right, and here on the left is the one I exported as a PNG and brought back in. And you can see it did a terrible masking job, but the point is I see no difference at all on either of these in terms of how they look. So for the person who asked the question, if you are still having problems, support at rippletraining.com. We'd be happy to look at it and see, but we both tested and didn't see any issue with that. So hopefully you guys aren't having trouble with that. And the one other question, I'll just turn it back to Steve in just a minute, but I do want to mention the transitions. Specifically, why can't we add transitions to text clips on the timeline without affecting the video clips underneath? And I would ask the question a little bit differently. Why can't you add transitions to connected clips, period? It doesn't matter if it's text or a logo or anything else. So for example, I have the Dripple logo clip, and I'll just select the whole clip, and I'll go into the blur category and add a radial blur to it, and stretch it out a little bit. And you'll notice that as we go into it, that the background video is blurring as well. Okay, so I just did a quick 60-second tip on how to address this, and instead of going into detail here, I'm just going to give you that link so that you can watch it. It's called Animating Transitions with Final Cut, and I'll put it in the chat field, where you can see it right here. Animating Transitions with Final Cut Pro. Another thing you can do is just go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/RippleGuy, and scroll down. You'll see Animating Transitions with Final Cut, and that explains basically how you can take this guy and open it in motion and make a quick adjustment, and it will no longer affect the underlying video. The reason I want to bring it up here is because somebody asked the question, and there was a lot of response to that video, like a lot of response, and I felt like I need to explain a little bit more, because you can't fix every single one the same way, put it that way. Like I showed how you can really quickly fix this one, but different ones work differently. So my question to you guys is, if you've seen that video, if you think it would be useful for us, we could go through all of the built-in transitions and create a separate set of them that will work on connected clips, whether it's text or logo or something else. I've dug into it. It's a little bit of work, but we would make it very cheap. But if you guys are interested in that, that's something we would look at doing. So leave us a comment in the chat there if that's interesting to you, and we'll take a look at doing that. And Steve, I think I'll throw it back to you.
Awesome. So I was remiss to mention Philip McDonough. Thanks for the super chat. I appreciate that. Yes, we are remote from Belize, and it's impressive, but we're obviously at the mercy of the internet gods at a time, every now and then, with the, cables going under the ocean and whatnot. So I want to talk a little bit about audio. I had a couple of questions about audio that I want to cover. So this is effectively the audio section that I want to get into. Here, audio. So this question is, I'm prepared to distribute my feature film to streaming companies and distributors for cinema streaming. Do you have any suggestions on deliverables and a secure backing up? All right, let's deal with that question first. There's a second part of the question I'll get to in a moment. But the first one is, people want to know how to deliver to Netflix, Apple TV, that sort of thing. All I could say is you really need to get a third-party aggregator to help you with. It's not something you want to do yourself. And here's why. If you cut to my screen, Travis, this is the iTunes guide for delivering for Apple TV. And do you want to wade through all this? Because here's the thing. If you get any of this wrong, and I mean any of it, it's going to cost you $800 to resubmit your movie every single time. Now, this is just Apple. This isn't even Netflix now. We're just talking about Apple. Every single streaming service has a very stringent set of standards that you need to be very aware of. So here's the thing. Most people aren't going to do this. They're going to use a third-party service like Juice. This is just one company. That what this company does is they prepare all of your assets. They make sure that when they are submitted to iTunes or Netflix, they're going to be correct. So if they're submitted to Netflix, iTunes, Amazon, you're going to, trust me, you're going to want to pay for this service. You're not going to want to do it yourself. Sorry, just too complicated and too many potential pitfalls, and it'll be very expensive if you do it wrong. So the other part of the question has to do with, let's see, with audio. Now, this is something you can do. And the second part of the question is, I've made some small changes in the master, and so distributors require stems. How do I make stems? I don't want to go back to the mixing house. Well, let's first talk about what is a stem, okay? What is a stem? A stem is an individual output of the dialogue, music, and effects track. Usually use this for foreign distribution so they can overdub the dialogue with another, another voice, maybe in Chinese or Spanish or what have you. And so a lot of distributors want to have them broken out in DM&E stems. So I'm going to walk you through how you do the stems in Final Cut Pro 10. Or actually now it's just Final Cut. Okay, so I'm going to open up this project here. And the first thing I'm going to recommend you do is set up your timeline, so that includes bars, tones, and slate. Okay, so this I have a little, little 2-pop. So this has a counting. Audio, people that are mixing audio professionally really want this count it down. And we have a movie that Mark created on our quick tips that will walk you through actually how to create this slate. Okay, the next thing that you want to do is make sure your roles are properly tagged. Like right now, it's kind of a mess, and which is nice. You can jump into the index and go show audio lanes, and now you have order out of chaos. And I'm looking at this, and all right, here's an example where this is an effect. It really should be part of the effects role, and right now it's part of music. So the next thing you want to do is make sure that all your roles are assigned properly. So here, I'm going to right-click, go to Assign Audio Roles. I'm going to assign this to Effects. Notice now that clip automatically popped up and it moved into the effects lane. So that's the other thing you're going to want to do, is make sure all of your content is properly tagged. The next step would be to take your timeline and go to the share menu and export a master file. All right. Now, before I do this, I want to point out one other thing. I added bars and tones. There's a little 2-pop and the tones, and notice I created a separate role for that called tone. This is important. You'll see why in a moment when I get to the stem section. So I have dialogue, music, and effects, and a tone role. Okay, now I'm going to go back to share, and I'm going to choose master file, go into settings, and I'm going to go to, let's see here. I don't need to do it this way. Go into roles, and then choose, actually, let me back up. Let me do audio and video. There we go. Roles, and up here, this pop-up, I want to go down and choose audio only as separate files. Okay, so I've done that, and so you can see that what's just showing me here is when I export this, I'm going to get a separate file for dialogue, separate for a file for effects, separate file for music, and separate file for tone, which I don't really want a tone on its own thing. I really want this tone to be part of these 3 roles. So what I want to do is go over here and click Add Role for the dialogue. So I've added tone to the dialogue role. Now I'm going to add a role to the effects, add the tone to the effects role. And for music, I'm going to go down, I'm going to add a role. I also want to, oops, there's music right there. I want to add the tone for music. Now I don't need this tone role, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. So what I've done here is I'm now going to export dialogue, effects, and music as a separate stem, but they're also going to include that tone that I added at the beginning of the timeline there. So then I click Next, and I export these out to a folder, which I've already done, so I'm not going to waste your time with that. And I want to show you what actually happened on the desktop. Let's see here, stems. So here's the 3 stems that were created. There's dialogue and effects. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up this music here. There's my tone, and here's my pop, and then here's my music. And I have the same thing for my effects. If I go to my effects, here's all my effects. There's my tone, there's my pop, and there's my pop, and then my sound effects. There's all my sound effects. All right, so I've just showed you how to create stems using Final Cut Pro. And great, what's really great if you do this a lot, you can save this as a preset, which is really great. If you create a preset for this, my stems, you never have to go through this work again of configuring this. You just apply that preset and you'll get the same stem preset every single time. It's fantastic. All right, so I'm going to cancel that and go to the next question, which was audio related. Let's see here. And the second question has to do with logic. Okay, it's a logic question. Is it possible to do a quick demo on round tripping audio to logic? Okay. All right, so I really honestly struggled with this question because I don't ever use Logic for doing audio post work. I'm very strongly opinionated about this, and you're welcome to share your opinion in the chat, but I look at Logic as a music creation application and an arrangement. It's good for music, but it's not the best audio post tool. There are better tools than Logic. There's Fairlight, there's Pro Tools, and there's even Adobe's Audition that all offer sound-related tools that are perfect for video editors. So not a huge fan of it. And there's a second reason I don't use Logic. Almost all the plugins that are built into Final Cut Pro 10 are Logic plugins. You can apply those plugins right in Final Cut. So I don't see any need to go over to Logic, really. The only real reason I see using it is maybe to send a movie over there and you want to score to it. But that said, I did promise I'd go through the workflow, so I'll do it, but something I would never use. All right, so I'm gonna go back and open up this final mix. Actually, no. Let me go into fine. All right. So here I have a very simple project. I have a dialogue roll, an effects roll, and a music roll. Okay, and I want to get this into Logic. So I'm gonna go File, Share, Export XML. Okay. Now I believe I already have this exported on the desktop. Let me make sure. Yes, I already do. So I'm not going to export it, but basically you export an XML for Logic, okay? And then you go over to Logic, and I don't even know if I have it launched yet. Let me go with Launch Logic. All right, and here we go. I know it's like always downloading stuff in the background, all right? All right, so it's launching Logic. All right. Yeah. All right, so my project's already in here for somebody to open the last project. I'm not going to re-import, but basically what you do is you go to the File menu and you go down to Import, and down here it says Final Cut Pro XML. So you would choose that option, and then you would navigate to the XML file that you just exported from Final Cut. It's on one of these. I think it's that one. I'm not going to do it because I've already have it here. The other thing that I should point out now, the way Logic handles roles and sub-roles, it handles them in terms of what's called track stacks. So for example, here's my dialogue, effects, and music, and there are no roles in Logic, so they're track stacks. So if I open this dialogue, you're now seeing the sub-roles, or what's called the sub-roles become individual tracks in Logic. And one of the things that you're going to want to do is go through, and you want to make sure that you're only working with the tracks you're going to work with. So like I've muted this dialogue. This is the second channel, the muted channel. One of the things I didn't like about Final Cut is that even if you have an audio roll turned off, it still comes in Logic turned on. So you got to do a lot of work before you're ready to start working on it in Logic. You can't just start working. Okay. So I'm going to make one small change here. Let's say I want to take this music, and maybe I want that music to be here, and I want to be this music to start here, and I'm going to trim back this music here. Okay, so I'm making a couple of changes. So you're seeing what I'm actually making changes, and I go to File, and now if I go to Export, you'll notice here there is an option, Project to Final Cut Pro XML. So you're creating a Final Cut Pro specific XML by this menu. Jumping back into Final Cut, go up to File. So you export it out, then you go back to Final Cut, File, let's Import XML. Then you navigate to the XML file that you spit out of Logic. There it is, Sedona master. I believe that's it. So I'm going to click import. And it's weird, it came in offline. All right, let me go back and do this one more time. All right. File, I'm just going to do this. File, export, Final Cut XML. And I'll call this Denise Sedona 2 and save. So it basically bounces out the file. Let's try this again. File, import, XML. And let's see, what did I call that? I added a 2 to it. So this should work. Oops. Not letting me. There we go. That one. Import. All right. This one worked. Now, what I'm going to do is take the, basically it comes into its own event and it makes a compound clip out of it. There's a compound clip. So what I'll do is then take that compound clip, drop it, bring it into the actual project like that. Okay. But then I want to assign a role to it. And you can't assign a role to a compound clip. So what you have to do is you have to go into the compound clip by double clicking, you know, and opening it. And notice inside that compound clip are all the individual stems or the individual tracks that Logic spit out. So all the work I did, it's all right here inside this compound clip. So all I need to do is select this, and I'm going to assign a video role, call this mix down. So I've assigned it a role. All of these clips, and remember I'm inside the compound clip now. Audio video roll. Oh, I missed one. Now I'm going to jump back to the parent. Now notice here, see that is my mix down. So all I need to do now is go back to music and effects, and I can literally turn all of these off because my mix down is in this compound clip.
Hello, well, welcome to Sedona. It is absolutely breathtaking. Check this place out.
All right. All right, so that's the workflow from Final Cut Pro to Logic. I just showed you how to do it. If you want to do it, there it is. But as I keep saying, I would never do that. So back to you, Mark. Where'd he go?
Here's a detailed description of something I would never do.
Well, you know what? It's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me.
Why?
Somebody would want to do it, so why not show it to them, right?
No, they do. Right. And there's a question like, why isn't it better integrated? And this is something we can't answer. We don't know really a lot about Apple's, behind the scenes thinking or their product plans. There's also some questions about what's coming. And just to preempt those, anybody who says they know what's coming next in Final Cut or anything from Apple doesn't know. Anybody that knows doesn't say. So that's all we can say about that.
Yep.
However, I'd like to jump in. There's a couple of questions sort of OS and M1 related,
yep.
And I'd just like to try to put those together. So the first one was, they said, great conference last week, and they're referring to the Final Cut Pro 10 Summit, which if you guys have never heard of it, it's a really great conference that was virtual this year, as is everything, but it was still fantastic, and check it out for next year. Maybe it'll be back in Cupertino. It's a lot of fun. But he or she asked, can you say something about Big Sur? Do we have to have the latest Mac with the M1 chip to install Big Sur? No. And I'm going to share my screen with you here and show you this is what you can have to install Big Sur. A MacBook Air 2013 later. I don't think anybody's running a MacBook Final Cut Pro 10 on that, but you can look. You've got old machines that you can add Big Sur to. So going back to as early as 2013, 2014. So Big Sur's fine on Intel Macs. Steve has been running Big Sur on his 16-inch MacBook Pro for what, Steve, like 6 months?
Yeah, at least 6 months. Yeah, I'm on the beta for all of their.
Yeah, wow. And he's right on the beta, and then so I have not. I'm still in Catalina just because I'm remote, and if something were to go wrong, I can't jump out to the Apple Store and get another laptop. My whole life is tied into this one laptop, so I've kind of held off on doing it. But it's fine to go, and most people that I've talked to find Big Sur an improvement over Catalina, but that's not a scientific survey. Next, there's several questions about the new Apple Silicon M1 Macs, and I did a little video about that last night. I'm posting a link to it right here in the chat field so you can see it, that talks about my tests. I basically got a hold of the 13-inch MacBook Pro, the new one with the M1 chip, for a couple of hours by borrowing it from somebody, and I set it up with my MacBook Pro 16-inch 2019 side by side, exact same media, exact same external, and I ran a few tests on Final Cut Pro 10 and Motion. And bottom line, I was pretty blown away because that 13-inch MacBook Pro was a base configuration. It had 8 gigs of RAM. I have 32 gigs of RAM. It had the base everything. I mean, there was nothing. It was like the entry level. It was like $1,800. I mean, it cost half of what my computer cost. And I would find it a little difficult to work with a 13-inch screen, but the performance in rendering, in exporting, and in playing back a motion, complicated motion projects with lots of replicated or objects or particle emitters was really impressive. So I was very, very impressed with that, and I am really looking forward to the new, at some point I assume they'll do a 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 chip, and I think that's just going to be, it's got a better graphics card, et cetera. It's going to be killer. Bring the computer I have. I have to remember, like, I'm doing great work with it, and they came out with something better. It's always going to happen. I'm really glad they're coming out with something better because I think it's awesome. So check out that video. There's a link there. And leave a comment if you've had your own experience with it. Leave a comment on that video so we can, people are finding out about it.
All right, cool.
I will just a couple more real quickly. A couple on plugins. I'll answer quickly from one person saying they're having trouble with a little bit of a jump on the screen. If you've got any trouble with any of our plugins, support at rippletraining.com. We'll get right back to you and figure out what's going on. So please just email support at rippletraining.com. What's your favorite third-party integrations with Final Cut Pro 10? There's a lot, but what comes to mind for me right away is Frame.io. Steve and I collaborate all the time. We use Frame.io either separately as the website. The uploader's fantastic, but the integration with Final Cut's great too because you can open it from within Final Cut and sync the review copy on their site and your own machine and jump right to what needs to be changed. So I love the Frame.io integration with that. There was a question. This is actually a really interesting question. Do you make a replacement for the blink filter available in Final Cut Pro 10? And then they said Ripple callouts is not on your website anymore. We're probably just in a different place. We don't, and the reason is the blink filter, you can do it in Motion with the strobe filter, but all of the retiming effects in Motion aren't publishable to Final Cut Pro. It's a limitation on things that need to be retimed. So that's why we haven't created our own. But in terms of, if you are interested in just in Ripple callouts, because we've been getting a lot of questions, that product, I will give you a link to that, maybe. Yeah, I'll post that link also in the little chat window here. And by the way, I will mention, I just got to mention one other thing. Our two biggest plugins that have tracking built in are Ripple Callouts Complete and Replete. Both those depend on what's called FxPlug 3 that is not supported on Silicon Macs, on any M1 chips. So, and that's true for anybody who's using FxPlug 3. FxPlug 4 is supported on the Silicon Macs, but it is not ready for prime time. There are major issues with it. So all the developers are very aware of this, that anybody who's made products that depend on FX stuck because FxPlug 4 is not ready and FxPlug 3 is not supported currently on the, so Steve, I'll go back to you and then, why don't you do a few and then we'll do some HDR stuff later.
Awesome. So, yeah, thanks for bearing with us with the, I know the audio is a little crunchy and Mark's picture is a little crunchy, but, he's on an island in Belize, so, forgive a little bit. But great answer. So I'm going to go through a couple of questions here that
I'm not on an island.
Oh, not an island. You're in Central America. Yeah, you're right. You're not an island. In my mind, you're in an island, though, so, because the environment is island-esque. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to the question list because there's some ones I want to cover regarding. There was a question on collaboration, a question that came up between Final Cut Pro 10, Premiere, and Resolve, which editor is best suited for remote collaboration and socially distanced professional production? Well, Final Cut, Resolve, and Premiere are all suited for remote collaboration. You can do it with all of them. So, they're just different approaches. I mean, we've done plenty of Mac breaks and plenty of these RippleLIVEs where we've shown you how to do remote collaboration with Final Cut. And it's in Mark's Media Management, and it works really well. So Final Cut works great. Premiere. If you guys do a lot of this, you work with, there's nobody here, I don't know how many people use Premiere here, but if you use Premiere there, you can do it. One thing I want to shout out to my good friends at PostLab. These guys are great, and they make software that makes collaboration really, really great. A lot of built-in features, super great guys, and if you will work with Final Cut or Premiere, this is the software that you want to use. With Resolve, you can also, Resolve 17 has a new feature now called DRT files, or Davinci Resolve timelines. So you can export just a timeline, a small text file of your timeline now in Resolve, and share that. And as long as the receiving editor has all the media, they can open the DRT file and work collaboratively. So the answer is they all work. It depends on what NLE you prefer working in. So, okay, let's move down. There's a question about what is the best way to handle Slo-Mo in Final Cut, on the shot or in the post. So I always, well, let's talk about the cameras. So, like, for example, if you're shooting on a Sony A7S III, okay, this camera has got amazing slow-mo capability. You can shoot up to 240 frames a second on this camera. And this camera also has what's called a S and Q mode, which is slow and quick. Simply what that means is that the camera will record slow-mo, and then you can actually then play back the slow-mo to see it right here, right off your cards. You don't have to wait to get it into your software to see it. So I wasn't sure if you meant, is it better to use the slow-mo feature in the camera or just do it all in post? So I was a little unclear about that. I mean, the way I work, I just shoot in the frame rate that I want to. I shoot in the highest frame rate that I think I'm going to need, and then I'll use Final Cut Pro's retiming tools to speed up or slow down. And I always prefer shooting in the highest possible frame rate because you have more information to work with. If you shoot at 60 or 30 or even 24 and then slow down, you don't have as many frames, you don't have as much data to work with. Now, I have found that optical flow works miracles on a lot of that slow frame rate, that low frame rate footage. So if you do shoot in 30 or 24 and you want to slow it down to 150% or whatever, you can optical flow it, and depending on the nature of the footage, it looks really good. If you do shoot in that SNQ mode on the Sonys, or there's another feature like that, I'm familiar with the Sony, not the way the other cameras do it, you can still bring that into Final Cut, and you can and then you can adjust speed on it and what have you. But I just prefer shooting at the frame rate that I want and then post-processing the slow-mo using the retiming tools in Final Cut. By the way, if you want a really good what's the word I'm looking for? Video on the subject of these different modes, I have a good YouTube video I want you to watch, and I'll just post that right here in the chat. Go check that out. That's a pretty good video on the subject. All right. All right, so I'm going down. So that's slow-mo question. So there's also a question, can you explain when to use the different stabilization options in Final Cut, how to use them? Well, I don't want to take any time with that because I created an entire video on that subject, and I thought I did a pretty thorough job, and I don't see any point in reinventing the wheel here. So I have a YouTube. I'm going to post it right here in the link, and you want to check that out. And it answers all the questions related to what I think, how the different stabilization options work in Final Cut Pro. All right. Mark answered the radial blur question. Let's keep moving down here. All right, so there's a question about proxy workflow that I want to get to. It says, all right. It's funny, I'm having a problem with my scroll wheel at the moment. Hang on one second, just bear with me. Yeah, it's kind of going past the question that I want to see. The question is, will Final Cut expand on its proxy editing technology due to the large file sizes of 4K and 8K projects? I don't understand the question really. You maybe want to fill me in and email me at support@RippleTrain, but you can already create proxies out of 4K and 8K media right now. So what exactly is missing that you need? So you can do.
See,
yeah.
It sounds like maybe they don't know about
the what?
They might not know about the options to create proxy media at much lower resolutions and frame rate and frame sizes.
Okay, so maybe they should watch your video that you did 3 months ago on working with proxy media in Final Cut Pro 10.4.9. Yeah, we did do a video on that, and what you want to do is you want to go down to here, and let's see, you gotta find. We did a whole video on that particular subject. Anyway, here it is. If you go into here, Final Cut Pro 10.4.9 new features, and then if you spill open show more, there's marked it. Here it is, Proxy Workflow. I'll just jump right there. There's a whole section on Proxy Workflow, and I'm going to go ahead and copy that and share that to the chat.
Include the time start at.
All right. Oh, I didn't include the start. My fault. Thanks, Travis. I didn't include the start time. That's where we want it. Thank you. So now, if you want to check out the video on Proxy, there it is right there. Feel free to watch that. Okay, cool. Thanks, Trav. All right. So those are some more questions. Mark, back to you.
Okay, I'm going to try. There's a gravel delivery happening next door.
A gravel?
So if it gets loud, I'm going to switch back to you, but it's quiet right now. I want to talk a little bit about HDR because there are several questions about HDR, especially with the iPhone 12 now able to shoot in HLG natively and how to work with it. And my first response is an existing video. I'll share my screen. I have a video in detail on how to edit iPhone 12 HDR video in Final Cut Pro 10. And yes, that's the noise you can hear. And I'm going to paste that video into the chat field right now. And then I'm going to do my best to answer a couple of these other questions. One question I can answer quickly is, how do I get video out of the Apple iPhone 12? So just to back up, there's two forms of HDR, two flavors that are most popular right now, HLG and PQ. You can't get PQ out of the iPhone 12. It's shot in HLG. That's the hybrid
log gamma.
A log gamma curve. So, yeah, say that 10 times fast. And it doesn't, PQ's the other version. It's a Dolby Vision version. You can't do that right now. So there's nothing you can do to get that out. The metadata is not there. It's not stored that way. PQ in general is a higher quality format just because it stores metadata so you can adjust colors and brightness values on a scene-by-scene basis or a shot-by-shot basis, which you can't do in HLG. But HLG is easily backwards compatible with standard dynamic range. I'd really suggest you watch that video because it explains HDR in general a little bit and then goes into how to work with it on the iPhone. There's a question about monitoring, and this is if you're really going to deliver an HDR, let me back up. Most people aren't delivering an HDR. They like to see brighter colors on their Mac screens or on their phones. The phone right now, the iPhone 12 is capable of a brighter nit value than any computer screen, any Mac computer screen. So you can view HLG on it. But like if you're in Safari on your Mac, you're not going to see high dynamic range. You're just not going to. It's going to be Rec 709. So don't even if you're delivering for the web, just do everything Rec 709. Don't even think about HDR right now. But if you're delivering for Netflix, TV, or any of those shows where you need an HDR deliverable, then you need to dive in and understand the process. And Final Cut has a very robust HDR workflow. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube right now talking about, hey, take your clips into Final Cut and just add just change the color space override and it'll be fine. And it sort of works, but it's really not correct. It's a lot of confusion about that. But in general, I would just stick with Rec 709 for most of what you're doing unless you're specifically delivering something for an HDR for broadcast. Is my personal opinion on that. But please take a look look at that video and see if it's helpful. I do have a couple questions on motion, and it seems like it got quieter out there, so I will try to address those. So one was about an issue with markers, a strange phenomenon with markers in 5.4.7. So my first thing I would say is update to 5.5 and see if it goes away. I really like, by the way, Final Cut 10.5 and Motion 5.5. I think the latest versions are great. It's funny because they did a big update a couple of months ago, some really good new features, and then did a kind of a small update recently so that they're all ready for Apple Silicon, but they didn't put a lot of new stuff in and got a lot of flack about that. But I think they're really stable and good versions. I'm not seeing this marker issue. So to the person who wrote it, I'm not able to imitate it, and I see they deleted prefs and tried everything to fix it. I don't know why that's causing that issue. Is there any way in Motion to have a line object that remains attached to two other objects that are manually animated? Yes, there is, and I have a short demo that I'm going to show you right here on my screen, where I have these two little balls, and one's moving around with a line between them. You can see it's moving around, and the line is stretching. And you do it with the track points behavior. You can see right here. If you write me at support@rippletraining.com, I'll send you the project file.
I'm laughing because your screen is less like so blurry because of the bandwidth issues. But yeah, you can kind of see it. Yeah.
Oh, it's blurry. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, if anybody sees and it looks okay, let me know. It'd just be interesting to know because I've got 60 down and 30 up, and it should be enough to do this. And I've done a lot of Zoom calls with no problem, but it's in and out. So the other point I'll make about this, I'll give it back to Steve, is that the track points behavior works some of the time and sometimes it doesn't. It's a little bit tricky. If you want both of these balls to move and have this move between them, it starts to break down. But that's the basic idea to make it work. I had one other person ask about, they wanted to animate COVID balls through a particle emitter and having trouble. So I wanted to show you what I would recommend for that is going to Sketchfab. Sketchfab is a great source for free and paid 3D models. So I downloaded a free 3D model from Sketchfab in the USDZ format, threw it into Motion, and put it in a particle emitter. So I got this, these little animated COVID virus balls from a single object, right, in an emitter. I threw a directional light in there for some lighting, but just to give you an idea, like Motion supports 3D object in the USDZ format. If you don't know that, it's huge, and you can get those objects from Sketchfab. You can throw them in and have a great time. So that's a couple of quick Motion tips. And Steve, I think I'm going to turn it back to you, and I'll look through the chat. By the way, I'm answering a lot of questions in the chat when Steve's demoing, so take a look for those.
That's great, those COVID balls. I can't wait till 2020 is over. Maybe even 2021. Who knows? So let's go back to my questions here. There was one question that came up. Let's see, relative to. Let's see. We're looking for it. All right. Okay, I think I found it. Okay, so this question was asked. I don't want to read the question because it's very, very technical, but just suffice it to say that this person is using Skype and NDI, which is what we're using for the show, and they're recording all the video and audio separate streams using OBS to actually record all the different people on the call so that they can then bring it into Final Cut. And one of the problems is that they need to take the audio from OBS and then demux it. Basically, demuxing is to essentially disassemble the video and the audio stream. That's what a demuxing. He uses a program called AvidMux. And I should point out right now, I don't use AvidMux. I don't use this workflow. I've never, ever done this workflow. So there's no way I can specifically answer this issue other than, okay, when you demux, then you have these individual streams, and then when you bring them into Final Cut, they according to you, they pop. So they just go, or maybe they make them more obnoxious sound like that. So without actually looking at workflow, without actually experiencing workflow, there's a series of sleuthing steps that you need to take to kind of get to the bottom of it. Like, I'm not positive that it's Final Cut that's causing it. You need to go back to the original, backwards, and figure out where in the chain that those pops are occurring. Is it happening at the OBS level when they come out, at the MUX level, or is it coming out at the DMUX level? Are you experiencing pops when you bring them into other apps? So there's a lot going on here, and there's just no way for me to say, here's what to do to get rid of pops. You've got to do some forensics. And I've given you kind of a trailhead from which to go on. Without actually doing this workflow, that's about all I can offer you, is you got to kind of go back through the pipeline and figure out where the pops are being introduced. And then try to get to the bottom of it. So that's my answer to your question. All right. Did I do a good job on the answer there? Yeah.
It was good.
All right.
Good luck.
Good luck. Yeah, good luck. Now, let's see here. I'm going back up to my list here. There was a question earlier. Sorry, is there one? So when I overwrite a file in Final Cut 10.4.10 by exporting a clip or timeline with the same file name, does Final Cut Pro ask me if I want to replace the file 3 times before starting export? Yes, it does. And I just started noticing this in 10.4.9 where you want to export, you've got to like click 3 times before you can get that file to export. I don't know why, but this is the way it is now. You got to click, click, click to get the file out of Final Cut. So I don't know what the deal is. You know, maybe you go to maybe file a ticket in. By the way, a lot of people don't know this is here. You go to the help menu in Final Cut, and there used to see it's
gone. It's gone.
No, it's not. It's in the Final Cut Pro menu. They moved it. If you go to Final Cut Pro,
okay. I was looking for that. I couldn't find it.
Provide Final Cut Pro feedback.
Hey.
So so basically you go to their website, you just go there, and I'm telling you right now, Apple reads these. You know, you put your name, your subject, and what the issue is, and they look at every single one of these. So, you know, you might want to post a little bit of feedback here. I'm glad I found it for you, Mark.
Yeah, that was awesome. Hey, can I jump in and answer a quick one? So there was an earlier question, how do you add transcribed text into Final Cut Pro 10? I got to get used to saying to Final Cut Pro now. In a way that you can search your whole library for spoken words and put parts into the timeline. I'm struggling with Simon Says. So Simon Says is an extension for Final Cut Pro 10 that will do transcription. And there are a few of them. What I'm going to direct that person to, and you guys as well, is first of all to this. This short tutorial, it's about an hour and 40 minutes about cutting interviews. It's really about, if you're doing interviews and you need transcription or you need captions or you want to be able to use the transcription to build your project, this will save you hours and hours and hours of hassle. If anybody's seen it and can validate that, jump in or look at some of the reviews on here. But I'm very proud of this because it really explains how you can work with cutting interviews and work with transcriptions. It refers to in there an app called Lumberjack Builder, which is part of this Lumberjack system that I'm showing you right here. And Lumberjack Builder is an amazing application from the Lumberjack guys that lets you take interviews and basically kind of build a paper cut, and it's deeply integrated with Final Cut. So my message to you is that I recommend, if you want to save time and learn that stuff quickly, check out the tutorial. I'll put a link in the chat window there. And then the tutorial, half the tutorial, 40%, 30% is about using Builder because it's so powerful. But it talks to how you can use Final Cut without any third-party products and different options for transcription as well and different options for captions. So check that out. Right. So other people are experiencing the 3 clicks issue that Adam brought up, Adam Olivero. So, I don't know. So there's a question about Twisted Eye Videos asking, FCP 10.5 doesn't recognize my iPhone 11 even with a cable on my Mac Pro 219. A lot of times the Mac needs to secure, it's got to go through a security protocol where it says, do you recognize this iPhone? A lot of times it won't recognize until the security issues are addressed. Are you getting, I guess my question is, are you getting any sort of security warning saying, hey,
if you use this my iPhone, do you want to make it active on this device? That's what you should be seeing before you even see the camera in Final Cut. The OS has to essentially bless that phone, otherwise you're not going to see it.
We've also experienced with the iPad, different cable, different port.
Okay. Oh yeah, Travis just brought something up too. Is that sometimes if you change the port or the cable, sometimes the issue will correct itself. So try a different cable, try a different port on your Mac. Okay. There's a question about motion in there somewhere. I just saw it came through here. Scott Silva is asking, what is the best solution for grow shrink behavior to stop at the size output, at the size out point without snapping back to the original? You've dealt with that a few times, haven't you?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the behaviors grow shrink among them. There's other ones. When the behavior ends, it snaps back to original value. So your two options are this. I find it really annoying, and I really wish they had an option on there that would just make it stay. So you can either change the rate to custom and then basically keyframe that rate, or like you basically extend the grow shrink behavior across the entire layer so it lasts the whole time, but then you keyframe it so that it hits a certain level and stops, or just keyframe, position, scale, what have you. I guess grow shrink would be scale instead of using the grow shrink behavior. So, or another option is you can use a rate parameter behavior applied to the scale of the object, and you can set that rate to a value and it will grow. And then you can use keyframes. So you kind of have to basically work around it, but there's multiple ways to do it.
Yep. All right, just answering a question in the chat. I love this chat. It's so great. All right. Does Mark have gravel being dumped or airplanes flying over right now? It doesn't sound like it. All right.
I turned my mic off. There's been a little bit of everything today. It's been a special day.
Yeah, so people are asking about our tutorials. Right now, they're all, if you just cut to my screen for a second, Travis, I mean, all our tutorials, Final Cut, Motion, Resolve, are all on sale until Monday, 40% off whatever you put in your cart. And like someone just asked me about OBS. Travis, who's actually doing the TechNet directing, he created this amazing tutorial on live streaming. So if you want to know how we set up work with OBS, I mean, this is a great tutorial. And he also...
I just posted the link for that.
Yeah. The other one that he did is a lot of people don't use OBS. I think if you're into the ATEM switching switchers, they're fantastic. Travis did a tutorial on all three of the ATEMs, the ATEM Pro, the ATEM Mini, ATEM Mini Pro, and ATEM Mini ISO. And you can go through, you can check it out. That's also 40% off. I'm telling you, man, that we love the ATEM Mini, especially the ISO, which you can record to SSD, separate streams from your cameras. It's huge, and you don't even have to use Resolve. I mean, you could bring those individual ISO streams into Final Cut and make a multi-camera clip out of it. So you don't have to use Resolve's cut page to use the ISO. I think, it's my opinion, if you were going to buy one of these, the one to have is the ISO, because again, to be able to record the individual streams from each camera we don't even know how we did without it before. So it's really great. All right, so let's looking back here for some questions. All right, did Mark still there? Or is he? He's there. He's just being quiet.
Hanging out.
He's just hanging out. All right, let's go back. We'll go back to our questions here. We're doing our best to answer as many of these as we can. I mean, we've got close to 60 questions, ahead of the show, which is really great because gives us a chance to really prep and think about the answers. Give you good answers. Let's see. All right, so there's a couple of questions regarding lookup tables or Luts that I'd like to cover. One of the questions is how to most effectively use Luts in Final Cut, right? And then the other one is that's related. If I want to use Luts, do I have to shoot log? If not, then what would be the best camera setting to take advantage of a Lut? All right, so let me jump into Final Cut. And let's see here, jump into Final Cut. And I have a clip. Okay, so this clip here is shot. Right. So that looks flat. It looks very loggy. Just so you know, we're shooting. This was shot with this awesome new Sony a7S III camera, which this camera shoots. You could shoot with this camera in RAW, going over the HDMI port to an Atomos recorder, field recorder. You can come out 12-bit and go into the recorder, or come out 16, but still records 12-bit on the Atomos recorder. And then the camera also records in different log profiles in ProRes and in the Sony, this built-in Sony codecs, not ProRes. I meant there's built the Sony, different flavors of the Sony record in, let's say, Sony S-Log3. So the first question is when do I use a LUT? Well, here's a clip where this was recorded with the Atomos Ninja 5 out of the HDMI port of the Sony a7S III. And I want you to see, I'm in the info inspector here, it says raw to log conversion. I'm going to just turn this off just for a moment so you can see this. Notice that it's like everything gets blown out, everything is just like really, it's just the image doesn't look right, because there's actually way more data that the sensor is captured than can be properly displayed on this monitor. So what happens is you have this sensor that captures all this data, and then it needs, in order to be able to work with the image, it has to do something with the image. It actually turns it into an RGB image, and internally it'll apply a log profile to it. So you end up getting basically a file where it takes all that sensor data, and I call it, Mark calls it the big squeeze. It's kind of, well, it kind of squeezes all that data into the proper color space. In this case, the color space here being Rec 709. Now, notice that there's a pop-up that says raw to log conversion. Right now it's none. Now, I'm going to choose this Sony S-Log3 Gamut 3. Now, as soon as I do that, and in fact, it's probably good to show it, also show you in the scopes what's happening. So when you do this, you're actually turning that high dynamic 14-stop data image, and you're squeezing it into a space so you're trying to preserve the highlights and the shadows. That's why it looks flat. So what I just did manually is what most cameras do internally. When you're shooting log in your camera, the camera is simply doing that. And when it comes out as a file, that's what you're seeing, okay? So where does the LUT come in? Well, when you import the footage and you have that metadata of the file, the Final Cut Pro will look for the metadata, and it should understand what that is and automatically apply a camera LUT for you. It's not here because I have it turned off, but normally it would apply the appropriate camera LUT. And as soon as I do that, you can see the image looks like close to reality. I'll play the Cine LUT here, okay? And you can even use third-party LUTs. We're big fans of there's this company that's called the Leeming LUT. They make two excellent Sony S-Log LUTs. We love these. One's the Athena Lut. I think for like 20 bucks you can get these two LUTs. And they're amazing. I mean, freaking amazing. So here's the Athena Lut applied, and here's the Pro 2 applied. So you can see there's slightly difference in the gamma and the color, but we're big fans of these Leeming LUTs. Okay, so now once you have the LUT applied, then you could jump into the you could jump into the inspector, and notice I have a color board. And at this point, you can then now grade on top of the LUT. See, we're very close now. So all we need to do to kind of get this where we want is now maybe just bring the shadows down a little bit, maybe push the highlights a little bit. And in fact, let me Control Command. There we go. That's much, sorry, and get more screen real estate there. But now what I'm doing is, sorry. Okay. So now what I'm doing is essentially grading on top of the LUT. I'm making small tweaks to make it look really, really good. So just, there you have it. Now, let's talk about another workflow. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to actually go back to the info inspector, and I'm going to turn off the camera LUT altogether. But I'm going to leave the raw to log conversion on. Okay, so I'm kind of back where I started. Now I'm going to go back in here, and now I want you to notice something here. You'll notice here I have a custom LUT. You have the color board, and then you have the custom LUT. Now, this LUT is applied using the effects browser. So you would go into color, and I think it's color. Custom LUT. Is it right? Down. Yeah. So basically, you would apply the LUT right to the clip itself. Now, normally people use these for creative LUTs, but you don't have to use them for creative LUTs. You can also apply you can use camera LUTs on these. And why is that important? Because here, look at the pipeline. So right here, the color adjustments I'm going to make are now happening before the LUT. So like now, notice here, if I turn this custom LUT on, and I've got my leaming LUT applied here, notice now the color board, the color corrections are happening before the LUT in the processing chain. So what's nice about this is that if you go into the color board, notice here now, notice when I start adjusting the highlights, look what happens. Look at as I adjust the highlights, when it hits 100%, the LUT is controlling the highlights. In other words, a LUT now is controlling, how much brightness I can add to that image or how many shadows. So here's a situation where it's called grading under a LUT. So you're doing your grade, but you have your LUT placed on top of the color board because this is a look that you want. So to answer your the one question about, well, my camera doesn't shoot log, that doesn't have to shoot log. Then add a color, just adjust it in the color board, then add a custom LUT. And by the way, I'm using this one, but you can choose one of hundreds of LUTs that are out there. And then you can apply whatever LUT you want on top of your color grade, okay? So what's happening is you have your color correction, it's then feeding the LUT, and what you're seeing here is the output here. So this situation, you're grading under the LUT, okay? So it's just another way of working with the footage. So hopefully that answered that. Mark, do you have any additional things you might want to add about that?
Sure. Yeah, I thought that was an excellent description, especially the part about the raw to log conversion, that usually just happens in the camera. That was excellent. The only thing I want to add is LUTs are designed to either be applied to a log clip or to be applied to a Rec 709 clip. And you need to know which LUT you're using.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just to finish that thought, you don't have to use a LUT at all. You can take log footage and grade it manually. There's no reason you can't do that. The LUT just can make it easier, designed to take that log footage and make it look like it was originally shot. So it's like a starting point for a grade. If you have a well-exposed clip, maybe all you need to do is add that camera LUT and you're done. The creative LUTs are usually designed to be applied to something that's already put into Rec 709. And it's often in the name. The LUT will say log to Rec 709, or it'll say Rec 709 to Rec 709. But that's the only thing you need to be careful about, because normally when you apply a creative LUT, you're applying it after the clip has already been put into Rec 709, either by grading it or by using a camera LUT.
Awesome. Thanks for the amplification, Mark. That's really great. All right, so I'm going back. I think we're doing a good job answering a lot of these questions that were pre-submitted and these ones. Let's looking over here.
Yeah, just want to do a time check.
Yep, 1:14. We'll go for another. How much do you want to go? Another 10 minutes? He just went into. All right, we'll go for another 10 more minutes. So if you have any burning questions, please post them. I'm looking through them right here.
And if we didn't get to your question, just post it again, and then we'll see it, because we're kind of starting from the bottom.
Sometimes we tend to miss. There's a lot here. All right. So Jim Connor asked, does the OBS training include how to use the ATEM Mini? No, they're two separate trainings. So we have our OBS training and we have our ATEM Mini training. We use them for different purposes, actually.
OBS is We love the ATEM. The OBS is way more flexible.
Yeah. Now, we love the ATEM, and my Travis behind me here. We love the ATEM, but the OBS is just way, way more flexible and what we can do with it, working with different Skype, you know, it just gives us more options. Okay. All right, here. Let's see. All right.
Hey, so BFAM just asked about fixing the output from the iPhone 12 Max. So BFAM, again, I made a whole video about that. That here, and I'll show it on my screen right now. You can see the video and the URL, but I'll copy the video, I'll copy the URL and put it in the chat. But it's got iJustine in there because at the time I made the video, I didn't have an iPhone 12. I still don't have an iPhone 12, but she does, and Justine was kind enough to loan us her footage, so I'm going to put that video, watch that. It's not real long and explains how to work with that footage.
So Adrian asks, when you make a custom audio or video roll, is it possible to create keyboard shortcuts? Not that I'm aware of. You got to kind of go into the roll editor and click the little plus button. I don't believe there are any shortcuts that you can create a roll with. That'd be kind of a cool thing.
I would say the only way is if you do it by a command, you could go into the system
preferences. Yeah. All right. All right. So Nathan points out, keep in mind, camera LUT inspector field shows should really only use it if no other grading is done for previous purposes. Good point. You know, I mean, I use the LUTs as a starting place. That's why I like that. That's why I like that Leeming LUT's a good, great starting place for a grade, and I have to do very little tweaking in the color tools to get the image where I want. Right, I'm going to jump.
Hey Steve, by the way, I've been using those same. Sorry, I was just going to say I've been using those same Leeming LUTs on my Panasonic GH5S. Yeah. And as long as you expose for them, you know, you really push to the right, then they're great. They don't work well on inside scenes, but anything outside where you can push to the right without blowing things out, they're fantastic.
Yeah, Travis is nodding his head in agreement. You've got to really watch your scopes, your histogram, to make sure that you aren't pushing it.
Yeah, he recommends you push to the right. He actually recommends you set your zebras to a very specific amount.
Yeah, if you ever use zebra, he says set. Yeah, he'll say set your zebras to a very specific amount. So yeah, great LUT, really, really good.
And taste the notes. Thank you very much for your contribution. Very much appreciated. And B. Stoddard and anybody else who contributed to our coffee fund. That's really, really appreciated. Peter Hitchcock and Izzy Diaz. I'm just calling back through. A lot of folks contributed. We really appreciate that. Philip McDonald.
There's some general Resolve questions I'd like to answer. I want to get to those. So actually, there's 3 questions. Tell me how Final Cut Pro can be used for repetitive recorded instructional lessons. Currently, I'm using an all-in-one software that records screen, camera, sound, and then we key and edit and pre-edit for add effects, etc. Would Final Cut ever be an alternative? Or would syncing everything plus presets never really work? Okay, kind of a long-winded question, but bottom line is, can you use Final Cut for instructional videos? Okay, I don't use Final Cut for any of our tutorials. I use a Telestream ScreenFlow for capturing the screen, editing the screen, adding callouts, adding zooms, everything. We then export a ProRes from Telestream ScreenFlow, bring it into Final Cut, and do our final audio sweetening right in Final Cut. So we're only using Final Cut for final audio sweetening for our tutorials. Now, Mark, on the other hand, he actually does use Final Cut. He'll still use ScreenFlow. He'll capture screen, spit out a ProRes file, and then he'll bring that ProRes file into Final Cut, and he'll use his 2 excellent plugins for his Ripple callouts and his Ripple punch-ins. The punch-ins, so they'll do the punch-ins to do the zooms, and they'll use the callouts to do the little outlines and the arrows. So you can totally do it in Final Cut. It just depends on what you prefer. I mean, we've just been using ScreenFlow so long that, you know, that's what we use, but totally use Final Cut and do everything that we do in ScreenFlow using Mark's 2 plugins. Okay, then there was a question about Resolve. Resolve 17 seems to have skyrocketed past Final Cut Pro in functionality with the release of the beta. Is it time to give up on Final Cut? I love the magnetic timeline, but the features of Resolve seem to blow Final Cut away with color correction, tracking, just about everything else. What do you recommend? Okay, I'll tell you, we do love Resolve. Absolutely, there's some great features in every release. They pack it with at least 100 new features, but What it doesn't have going for it is the magnetic timeline. To me, that is the biggest reason to use Final Cut. We're not going to stop using Final. That is our primary editor. It's fast. It's super fast. The interface is uncluttered. It's focused. It's designed to do one thing very well: edit, to tell your story. And then if we do need something that Final Cut can't do, like if we need to track something, or if we need a special tool to work with just skin tones, we need a special qualifier that just isolates the skin, we'll send that over to Resolve. So we use both, and we try to, we don't play this game like it's Resolve or it's Final. No, it's the best tool for the job. For editing, for us, Final Cut's tool is the best tool for the job. For certain other features, Resolve is the best tool. And I don't see any problem with having two applications on your system. I mean, we have Photoshop, we have After Effects. I mean, you should be using a whole host of tool sets. So I don't get into this bifurcation of, you know, of apps. Just use the app that's going to do the job for you. So then there was a question also about Resolve. Will you do a comprehensive update to your instruction on round-tripping video to and from Davinci Resolve? Okay. We have several videos already online that talk about the process. Now, we still need to look at, you know, how it works with Resolve. We probably need to revisit that because we have a new version of Resolve, but it's essentially the same workflow. You just export an XML of your timeline in Final Cut and import that XML into Resolve. That said, I am not a fan of round tripping. Honestly, I don't see any point, and I've yet to in fact, feel free to comment. I've yet to hear any good explanation why, when I go to Resolve, I need to come back to Final Cut. To me, Resolve is a finishing app. You finish in Resolve. So you send your stuff over to Final Cut, and then you use the tools in Final Cut, and then you output from Resolve. So again, I'm willing to be educated, but I agree. I just don't see any point in coming back to Final Cut. What's the point of it? But some people may have a very good reason that I haven't thought of. So I'm not going to be so like arrogantly, but from my point of view, send it to Resolve, finish in Resolve if you're going to do that. And plus, Resolve has Fairlight. If you need more audio tools, they've got the whole Fairlight. They got Fusion. There's other tools in there. So anything else about that, Mark? He's listening to gravel being dumped out of trucks.
No. I think I agree. I agree with you that. I mean, I have round trip projects in the past because I had somebody else do the color correction in Resolve at that time. So I wanted to have the final project in Final Cut so I could still tweak it and export it myself. But if I do everything now, if I go to Resolve, I go out from Resolve. I don't go back to Final Cut.
Greg, have you tried using LoopTech CT? I've seen the LoopTech. It looks impressive. With Final Cut, honestly, I'm so facile with the keyboard now. I just don't know what benefit I would get from it. I mean, I've had other control consoles, and I use them for a little bit, and pretty soon I'm like, it's just off to the side, and I'm just back to the keyboard again. I'm not saying it's not useful. I just find it's just another thing sitting on my desk, honestly. But for some people, probably fine. Okay. Let's see. Jonathan Kinnear, thanks for the super chat. KB, thank you for the super chat. Really great. Appreciate that. Greg, Rory talked about Monogram Creative Console, which is again another console. I've never heard of it. Travis, Adam, Travis, can I chat offline about my OBS FCP question? Sure, Adam. Just use support@rippletraining.com and we'll make sure Travis gets it. Okay, awesome. So I'm just going through one last thing to make sure we're getting them. I think we're doing a really good job on these questions, Mr. Mark. All right.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're getting.
Sure.
Maybe we can wrap it up. It's very
late
here.
Oh yeah, that's a good. Travis needs lunch too. All right. Well, I think it's be a good point to wrap it up, sir. So that was my transition. That was my page peel to me saying, "Hey guys, thank you for spending your time with us today. We know your time is valuable, and it means a lot that you would spend an hour and 20 minutes with us in listening to us about helping you to improve your workflow and tell better stories. We really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting us through buying our tutorials, our plugins, and watching our YouTube channels. We really couldn't do this without you. So super thanks. And anyway, any last words, Mark?
Just we'll do it again. So stay tuned. Make sure if you haven't subscribed, subscribe and click the bell so you get notified. And we look forward to doing this again. We really enjoy it. So you know, look for our content. We have content out a couple times a week, every week, and we'll do another live show soon.
So thanks again for watching. All right, have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe.